Hi everyone, how's it going? Thank you very much for joining today. We're going to kick off the webinar now, and I'll just pin my screen to make the presentation bigger and us smaller, so you don't have to look at us too closely just there. But here, look, what we're going to be talking about today is mine-site automation, and particularly how you could do it through, Drone or Box or HubX or HubT. So, in particular, what we're going to be looking at is going through a quick introduction from who these two floating heads are on the screen. What does mine site automation look like? How is automation being used on mine sites at present? What is BVLOS? What is BVLOS? Complexities of mine site automation. Some of our solutions, and what mine-site automation looks like in the wild. At the end, we'll have a Q&A. But as always, if you would like to ask questions as we go through the webinar, feel free to post them in the chat. And guys, I'm actually going to ask the question. I know I've been talking already for the last 2 minutes, but can everyone hear me? If people could just post in the chat saying that they can hear me, that'd be great. Or maybe react on screen. Perfect. Unreal. Thank you very much, everyone. But all right, our two hosts are the two floating heads. So Cian Gleason, so head of sales. I also manage all of our, I suppose, customer implementations around dock technology, and getting people set up with the actual technology itself from both a HubX and a HubT perspective, as well as guiding people down the rails of BVLOS and remote operations. That's a quick introduction for me, and I'll pass it over to Elliot.
Hey everyone, nice to meet you all. So I'm Elliot, I'm the Chief Remote Pilot here at Sphere. Been here for about 8 years and pick up a thing or two over that time. The drone industry is certainly an interesting place. I guess my role is to guide the team on ensuring that we're conducting safe, compliant operations, guide the team on the right solutions for the right products, support Cian and his team, and then of course manage the relationship with CASA, etc. So glad to be here with you guys today.
Perfect. Thanks for your introduction, Elliot. Okay, just quick background on Sphere Drones, where we've come from. We've been around the traps for the past 10 years or so. Is when we first started, we were primarily selling drones. Really started getting interesting back around 2018, 2019, developed out a hardware team, an IoT engineering team, and then finally a software team. In 2024, then we really doubled down on BVLOS and remote operations, developing our HubX prototype and driving it essentially all around Australia, which was a great time. We got a BAR's approval, and then onboarded Aptella as one of our key partners. But yeah, since then, 2025, we've really just been implementing drone boxes and HubX and HubTs across a whole heap of different industries, including drones as a first response, mining, civil engineering, and then various different government agencies as well. So that's just a quick background from the company. Now, looking at mine automation in particular, what does it actually entail, right? So it really kind of entails centralizing drone operations, and then scheduling all the flights. So developing up a schedule of operations, and then getting your geotech surveyors, drill and blast guys, all to provide flight details, and then you can automate the data capture based on that schedule. Uh, as you can imagine, it also involves not going out and pulling out the SD card from that drone and uploading it into your computer. Everything's done remotely through satellite or LTE connectivity. What does this entail, or what does this bring forward? It really helps with mine site safety. So it's a topical issue, reducing light vehicle interactions in the pit against heavy vehicle traffic, and also reducing transit time across the pit. So some sites in particular have quite large pit areas that it could take, an hour each way to travel out to do a survey or a piece of data capture. How could you essentially automate that from afar is where we're getting to. The real-time decision making allows a team in the remote operations center react almost immediately to requests or for operations out at the mine site, and it allows us to be proactive. And again, who doesn't love a nice buzzword like integrated workflows? So we can sync with existing tools, and that might be from a mission planning perspective, but then also from a GIS or a processing perspective. Could be some other interesting ways that you can integrate. So what does mine site automation look like? So every morning, an automated drone launches from a drone box on the edge of a pit. Right, we'll fly pre-programmed route, collecting high resolution images of stockpiles, and then the drone will land and send that data back to the platform of choice. So the platform of choice being a processing software as an Amazon S3, and then the processed data is provided to and analyzed by the surveyor team. That's an example of an automated workflow, and essentially what we would do is that we would remove we'd enable people to stay on the dongers inside a remote operation center while that happens. So the pathway to automating dock operations on site requires buy-in from a multitude of different stakeholders. What we've seen is that surveyors, being the drivers of, let's say, drone operations on site, typically grab the bull by the horns and they say, right, we could have great benefits of this. And the reason why is that a lot of other teams come to them and ask them if they can do their data capture or data pickups, or if they can support them with a drone operation. So really the surveyor teams have typically been grabbing onto it. And then what will happen next is that the fixed plant inspection guys could see benefits from an AI perspective, or the drill and blast team might see benefits in the drone or a box, recording their 12 o'clock blast, and then so on. The heritage teams get involved, the rehab teams, and then the haul road monitoring teams. And it's not just limited to those teams. It just kind of shows the expansion of the operation across the mine site and how that could be beneficial.
Just a reminder for everyone as well, if you do have questions as we go, please do pop them in the chat. I'm just typing away on my other monitor over here to people in the chat. But yeah, if you do have questions as we go, please feel free to ask them, and we'll circle back to them at the end if we can. Sorry, back to you, Keane.
No, you should explain this slide.
I can explain this slide. So effectively, in terms of the use cases on site, of course, any scenario where you need to gather insights on site, or a sort of example where you could be utilizing a drone in an automated workflow. So some good examples here that a lot of you will be familiar with, things like stockpile measurement and monitoring, site modeling. Drill and blast analysis is another really interesting one, having a drone there for oversight and compliance perspective, and being able to kind of refine your methodology and your techniques to ensure that you are getting the appropriate detonations, etc. Rehabilitation, site monitoring. So the Enviro team, of course, are quite enthusiastic about the utility of drones on site there. Haul road inspections. One of the statistics that I heard years ago was around the numbers regarding gearbox wear and tear on haul trucks, and the haul roads being out by a certain very small degree can result in a very substantial change to the maintenance cycles on haul trucks and result in a large expense. So ensuring that you've got that haul road and those haul roads in good condition and at the right gradients, etc., is all really important for the mine workings, as I'm sure a few of you are quite aware. Tailing dams checks, erosion and earth change detection. So all of these data points that have been gathered by the drones there. Perimeter monitoring from a security perspective, and then if there's an incident, being able to send a drone out to that sort of environment and have overwatch on that sort of environment is can make all the difference. So.
And on that, one of our customers actually out in South Australia had some, let's say, nasty weather over the weekend, and there was a bit of damage on site. So again, from an executive response aspect, we were able to go on launch a drone, and then they were able to remotely monitor and assess the damage that was caused to some of the infrastructure on site, which was a great use case for those guys. But now we're going to go into, how do we get there? There's obviously a couple of steps to get to, automating drone operations on site. And really it starts with BVLOS. So there's no better man to speak to BVLOS than Elliot over here, who's well accustomed with it.
Thanks, Kian. I had half a mind to flick this one back to you just for a laugh, but no, Kian's obviously well versed in this as well. But in terms of BVLOS, of course, there's the visual line of sight is the style of operations that most people are familiar with. Being able to see and orient the drone at all times. There's a couple of different kind of steps up from that where you can move across to extended visual line of sight, where the pilot doesn't necessarily have to be able to see and orient the drone anymore through the use of trained observers. So you can see on the screen here at the moment, there's the trained observer. There's a couple of different categories. So there's EVLOS Class 1, where the trained observers are co-located with the pilot, and you're limited to that 1,500 meter radius. But you might want to go and use a network of trained observers to extend your range. So EVLOS Class 2, or perhaps EVLOS Remote Operations Center. But the kind of crown jewel, I suppose, is having that ability to use a drone under a BVLOS environment where you don't have to utilize trained observers and unless you wanted to or unless the scenario called for it. But being able to operate from a remote operations center with a drone in a box or a drone in the field with a remote controller, with a remote pilot in the comfort of an office, with close access to a coffee machine, etc., is pretty convenient. But the efficiency and improvements there, it's a pretty logical segue to kind of go through those stages to get out to that BVLOS where, you're not restricted by, range of line of sight from the pilot to the drone.
Sweet. Not bad, Elliot. He knows his stuff.
So I'm going to be greedy and take this one as well.
I'll give it to you.
So in terms of the team members here, so there's a couple of different aspects of it. So, of course, the example that we often use is the example of an airline in Australia, for example, where you've got an operating certificate for the company, and then all of those pilots have to have a commercial pilot license, etc. So Qantas has an air operating certificate, and then their pilots have to have their commercial pilot license or air transport pilot license. Similar sort of vibe with drones where the remote pilots must have a remote pilot license to operate beyond visual line of sight, and then they need to have an instrument rating exam theory pass or an outside controlled airspace exam pass. So that was an exam that was brought in by CASA to make access to BVLOS a little bit more simple. So generally, they will be required to have those exam passes. There is a possibility of having supervision, but it's a bit of a separate conversation to have. And then from an organizational perspective, of course, the organization has to have a remotely piloted operating certificate. And then you can conduct VLOS operations under that REOC. And a good segue, a good sequence is to start doing visual line of sight operations first to kind of get experience and an understanding of drone operations. And then you can step up to EVLOS if you want to, or you can jump over to that BVLOS category. So in terms of this one, of course, from a BVLOS perspective, you have to have all of the different factors that feed into that to ensure that you can satisfy, the CASA requirement and make sure that you're conducting safe operations, etc. And once you get to that BVLOS capability, you need to ensure that you've got that stack there. So that's where the mantle gets handed over to Kian, and he can talk to the technology stack there.
And by the stack, he kind of means this ball here about to enter the goal. So HubX, Hub T towards your remote operations. So what that means is just having, redundant connectivity on site, redundant power on site, but then also having your situational awareness around the drone itself. So understanding if someone's in the vicinity of the drone before it launches, takes off, the weather data around the drone, but then also communicating with the aircraft, ADS-B and airband radios, essentially. We'll talk about that in some more detail not so long ago. Now, not so long ago, in the future. Got my past and future tenses mixed up there. Complexities of mine-site automation. That's what we're moving on. So one of the biggest complexities is the CASA regulation. So in particular, the BVLOS approval. So when we're applying for a BVLOS approval, it's on a site-by-site basis. So what does that mean? Each mining area or mining lease, tenement, whatever you want to call it, is an enclosed area. When we're applying for a BVLOS approval, we'd essentially go to the regulator, being CASA, and we'd say, right, this is our area that we want to fly drones beyond visual line of sight. And then we need to build out a safety case. So essentially a SOAR, specific operations risk assessment, where we would outline all of the different risk scenarios, both from a ground and an air risk perspective. We'd build the safety case, and then we'd submit that to CASA. That would get given to an inspector, and then an inspector would then review that safety case and then come back and then say, yes, I believe that you have all the right mitigations and factors in place, processes and procedures to operate, let's say, beyond visual line of sight at this location. Or they might say to you, how do you know if it's windy at this site? And then you have to go back and then justify how you know the wind at that site, being like a localized weather station or having one built into your system, for an example.
Yeah, and I guess, obviously the CASA role here is to ensure that safe and legal operations are being conducted. And so, that thorough review of your procedures, your concept of operations on this particular site, it's something where at the moment, the current lay of the land is that it is a site-specific area approval. It might be something where in time we do see that start to open up, which will be really fantastic for industry and further facilitate deployment of remote solutions. But for now, doing that site-by-site assessment, allows us to ensure that we are, factoring in all of the parts of the equation to conduct safe operations.
Perfect. Now, the current BVLOS application timeline, this is something that we've experienced firsthand. We are obviously an operator of BVLOS and remote operations ourselves. And this is something that we've just experienced from being in the game for a couple of years now. So when you were doing an initial BVLOS application, this can take anywhere from a month to 3 months to gather all of your information and develop that SORA risk assessment. Once you submit it, typically it's been in that kind of sitting in the queue for about 6 to 8 months. I actually reckon it's probably come down to around 4 to 5 months now at present. But when it's sitting in that queue, it'll sit there idle and nothing will happen. Once it gets to the front of that queue, you're giving your CASA inspector. That'll take about 2 months to be reviewed, and then you will be issued with some feedback on it, where you will then make some amendments. And then after that, then you'll have to have the CASA inspector come out to site and test you on your BVLOS knowledge. Once you're given that approval, every subsequent approval is actually a lot easier and a lot more streamlined due to the fact that the review process typically gets shortened down a bit more because you've proven that you can do BVLOS and remote operations, and the CASA inspector doesn't need to come out to site to verify your testing.
Yeah, pretty much. And so, it's something where that's where the quality of the application that you submit also, prescribes how long this whole process takes. So it is something where if you can put together that robust application, then it does help this process go a little bit more smoothly. If there's anything you need on that front, just let us know.
Sweet. So some other complexities of mine-site automation is just looking at the technology required to actually do it. It's quite commonly known across Australia, you can't really just take a dock off the shelf and plug it into the power source and away you go. Well, you can if you're doing VLOS, but it gets a bit more tricky out at, let's say, a pit edge. For example, you're at a coal mine or an iron ore mine. There isn't power or connectivity as abundantly as you would like.
We are a big country.
A very big country, confirmed. So we need, some sort of infrastructure out there for power connectivity, concrete, fencing, all that good stuff. But then you'll also need, moving on, communications out at that area. So CASA loves redundancy. So it's proving to them that, you have a primary connectivity, but then also some sort of backup connectivity in the advent where the connectivity or your primary connectivity solution fails. So that could be satellite, LTE, combination of both. We use bonded cellular modems, routes of throughput through both of them. Power availability, again, CASA loves redundancy. Typically, they like to see UPSs installed, so utility power sources. We kind of tick it off from a linear battery arrangement in our systems, and then for our fixed solutions, having the UPS in there as well. Having the capability to monitor your airspace, your ground risk, and weather systems is pretty important, similar to what we talked about in this current slides previous. And then integrating with GIS providers.
I was just
keep going.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna add to Kian's comment there in terms of the situational awareness piece. Having people on the ground gives you that full situational awareness of what's going on in that space. And so if it is something where you're transporting that person from being in the on the ground environment to a remote operations center, it is something where you need to be able to justify. How do you know, as Kian said before, how do you know what the wind's doing on the ground there? How do you know what, the airspace, if there's, aircraft flying through the environment, or if there's people walking around the dock, etc. So having that full situational awareness as best you can, you really want to be able to justify that to the regulator that, you do have that full picture. Sorry, back to you about the integration and GIS. Yeah.
No, it's just kind of, I suppose, finalizing off the data flows. So it's one thing flying the dock and, you're getting your data to Flight Hub, but it's really just trying to figure out where that data needs to go, whether it needs to go to a processing software, a database, and, is there any specific naming conventions with it? It's all these kind of things that are kind of overlooked, where you really need to have those integrations to prove out the value. One of the things is, for example, you collect all the data, it goes straight to Flight Hub. People are trying to do AI with the data. The data isn't named in any convenient manner to actually pull that off and then process the data. So having all of those structures laid out from a software perspective is pretty beneficial as well. But yeah, that's essentially it. When we're looking at stakeholder engagement and buy-in, that's a big thing. So there's a couple of external and internal stakeholders, both from an operation standpoint and a commercial standpoint. So when we're looking at it from an operational standpoint, some of the people around your mine site could be neighboring aviation operations, local aerodromes, agricultural plane and helicopters, military operation, or even the recreational airspace. It's all well and good that you have your airband radio and you're trying to track them through an ADSB, but as we know, ADSB isn't mandated in Australia. So it's all around risk mitigation when you're proving out this, let's say, safety case to CASA. We have to go around and we have to knock on all the doors and we have to say, right, we're going to be doing beyond visual line of sight operations between this period and this period, and just be aware of it. And again, it's just risk mitigation. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. And then, as Ken said, the getting the buy-in from internal stakeholders is another aspect of this that is really important to enable successful deployments of these sorts of things. So, by being able to unite all of the different stakeholders within an organization and get that I guess data democratized, that's something that we've been kind of talking quite a lot about over the last little while. Is being able to share the data amongst these different divisions and things really helps provide that kind of value to this sort of solution.
Yeah, and the issue to get there is that there's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy around uplifting into BVLOS or remote operation. It's a business transformation piece. So we've typically been helping prove out the operation remotely from our remote operation center here in Sydney, and then proving out the value and then helping people transition over to it. But Moving on, so further from an internal perspective, you also have your internal on-site or pass operations, as well as corporate aviation that you need to interact with when you're going for BVLOS approvals, contractors that are coming on site, and just letting them know that there's going to be an automated drone operating remotely. It's going to be pretty important. You also have general personnel on site, and general corporation teams and operational divisions that all need to be notified of this just for safe and compliant operations. So, quick poll question, guys. Do you currently operate any BVLOS operations?
So we've got a couple of options there. So we've got, yes, we have an active BVLOS approval. We're in progress. We're working through a BVLOS application with the regulator at the moment. Not yet. We're exploring what's involved and no idea where to start. We need help navigating. So we'll just give it another 10, 15 seconds for everyone to pop their thoughts down there. It's good. We've got some numbers coming in. So
we've got some diversity in answers would be the right thing to say. Some people have approvals and people are still exploring what's involved. Okay, guys, we won't stay here for too long, so we'll kick on.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Those kind of points with us, guys. It helps us understand, where you are in your journey, and helps us better refine these sorts of products, so we can help you on that journey.
For sure. Now on to the plug of Sphere Drones. So our solutions, how can we help you? So as you may know, we have an off-grid trailer-based system called HubX. The whole idea is that it can be wheeled out, deployed within 30 minutes on a mine site. Doesn't require any infrastructure or connectivity. Sometimes makes the engineers that bit happier that they don't have to trench power or connectivity 20 k's to the edge of a pit. And again, it has all of your avionics in there. ADS-B, airband radio, situational awareness cameras,
and weather monitoring, etc. Yeah,
weather monitoring, satellite connectivity, Starlinks, bonded cellular modems, good to go. Rated up to a mine spec standard as well, which is nice.
I think it's about as close as you can get to plug and play, but you don't need to plug it in. It's just ready to go.
Yeah, off grid and play. Yeah, perfect. And then we also have, a hub-T based solution. So a hub-T based solution being a skid based solution. The idea is that this can be craned off or forklifted off, and has all of the sensor stack required to do a BVLOS or remote operation on site. And what we've seen is a lot of people can hack together, one solution, one drone or a box operation, airband radio, flight radar 24, flight controller, and they'll get that operating. But the issue is in scalability of your solutions, and having that kind of top-down visibility across an organization. So if you have 5 drone or boxes out there, how can you effectively deploy and manage those? Is what we've been seeing. So we also tie all this information up through Curo. So Curo is our own software, and again, it incorporates everything you need for ROC operations. Manages your air traffic management systems, so your ADS-B, airband radio, and then we have it also integrated with Air Services Australia to understand controlled, non-controlled air drones, restricted airspace, and so on. And then also manages all the compliance around drone or box operations. So taking your flight logs off and storing them effectively and efficiently as well.
Yeah. So with Curo as well, we've got a CASA certified safety app, so you can go and use that to go and check the airspace, etc. So if you've got any questions on that one, let us know. And then, basically, as Kian was mentioning, having all of that information in the one portal just allows you to have that good situational awareness piece, and you can make those safe and effective decisions when the pilot is flying. And then, all of that record keeping all being there allows it to, tick the boxes from a compliance perspective.
Sweet. And then I can just see, and then, where the data gets stored is QROX is a front end repository for the data. So we can essentially send that through, and it's an Amazon S3 server based in Sydney, is where data is stored and secured by them. So one more poll question, guys. What is the biggest thing standing between you and BVLOS adoption right now? So we do have 4 questions here, or sorry, 4, or I even got it wrong. There's 5 answers here. There's compliance, infrastructure, data workflows, stakeholders, and to be honest, not sure yet. Still investigating. Okay. An interesting spread of answers again, guys. Mix between compliance, stakeholders, and not sure yet. It sounds like a lot of people are still at the start of their BVLOS journey and still trying to scope out the values behind it. But we'll end this poll and we'll move on. Case study focus. So we're going to have a quick chat on just some of the operations that we did. So we did a proof of concept recently with Glencore up in United Wambo in the sunny New South Wales Hunter Valley, very famous for wine and also coal mines. But what we're going to do is we're going to send a link to this video out after the fact. We're not going to play it live on this webinar just from latency issues perspective. But again, we went up to the survey team at Glencore, deployed on the edge of the pit, and we were able to help them over the course of a week with some drone-in-a-box operations. Again, the whole concept behind it is that the surveyors up there slammed. They're getting tasked by every other division on site to fly drones quite ad hocly all the time. So how could a drone in a box aid them in their own operations? Again, guys, we will send a video out after the webinar for you guys to take a look at. So challenge, mounting pressure on surveyor team. Objective, increase the capacity of surveyor team while maintaining data quality. Now, how we can help, some more selfless plugs. So we can help with HubX, a HubT, HubX if you need an off-grid solution, a HubT if you need a fixed solution, and then we're able to also provide remote operations and managed services as well. Again, we've seen that has been quite beneficial to actually get people uplifted into remote operations, prove it out, and then help with the adoption then after the fact. Now, that's all in terms of the content, guys. I did want to see if there was any questions for us. So you're posting the questions, and I think, do we have some?
Yeah, we do have a few questions. So we've got a couple of questions around the data security side of things. And so I think in terms of data security, it is a bit of a hot topic at the moment. So if you do have any specific data requirements there, shoot us through an email and we'll be happy to have a conversation with you around how we can kind of tick your boxes there. In terms of there's a question here around the hold up with BVLOS approvals. So why does it take so long? Effectively, because there are drone in a box activities have become quite popular. It is something where there is quite a lot involved, as we were talking about before, from a air risk and ground risk assessment. All of the procedures and processes, stakeholder engagement, all that sort of stuff needs to be assessed by the regulator. So yeah, it is something where there are a few people in the queue, and CAS is doing a great job, churning through the approvals, but it is something where they have to make sure they're doing their due diligence and assessing people on a case-by-case basis. So we've got another question here around, once the drone lands, how quickly can we see the data? So that's a bit of a hot topic. Did you want to touch on that one?
Yeah, so there's two different thought paths on this one. So we're designing our own command and control and execution software So simply because the Flight Hub servers are quite slow when you're transmitting data. So we've seen through our own, let's say, software that we've managed to increase the throughput of the data by about 10 times in comparison to Flight Hub 2. So that's something that's to bear in mind. If someone would like to have a conversation about that after the fact, please reach out. I can share some more actual information on that.
Awesome. We've got another question here around why would I use the HubX over setting up our own solution? So it's a great question.
I suppose I can jump in for this one. It just comes to scalability of the solution and the project management aspect of it. So going ahead and scoping out all the requirements from CASA and then actually implementing a solution. HubX in particular, it's an off-grid trailer. You don't have to really think too much about the power and connectivity solution. It gets deployed to your site and set up in 30 minutes as opposed to going through the whole engineering process of setting up power, connectivity, and then integrating cameras and ADSBs and airband radios and whatever else could be involved with it. It just depends on how much work you want to do and how much of that you want to outsource.
And I think as well, having the integration being a clean, easy to understand, easy to interpret solution, having that all presented in a with a nice bow on it, makes the operation as a remote pilot and me as a chief remote pilot wanting to make sure that I've got a robust solution. For me, HubX ticks all of those boxes and makes sure the situational awareness suite is there. And in terms of the way that obviously I can't speak on behalf of CASA, but CASA has obviously given us approvals based on our processes and procedures, and so it's something where having that demonstrated product that does tick the box is another reason why HubX works. So
sweet.
So being mindful of time, I think do we have to 1:15?
I just see one more question come through, guys, and I'd say we'll answer that, and then we'll probably wrap it up there. So, how is data uploaded, and when is it accessible for post processing? In telco denied environments. So we are operating at present across a number of different telco denied environments, specifically LTE. The way that we operate there is that we use a multitude of different Starlinks for data transfer. Again, it just kind of comes down to the data throughput at that location, how much data we're trying to send up. So each location is different, but we'd expect to see data within 30 minutes, an hour after the operation to transfer up into the cloud.
And I think we might have to make this one our last question just from a timing perspective, but how do you manage airspace and potential aircraft avoidance in Class G where ADSB is not required on many aircraft? So it's a very hot topic at the moment there, Dennis. Effectively, that's why it's so important to conduct really thorough stakeholder engagement. Obviously, there's a big push from industry to try and mandate electronic conspicuity so that it is safer skies for everyone, as the motto of CASA goes. So having something like that come into play in future will really help. But in the meantime, the only real options are to conduct stakeholder engagement with as many people as are appropriate for that environment. So if you're in a regional environment, it might be things like crop dusting or mustering operators, might be local stations, etc. So making sure you're doing a good job of that stakeholder engagement is really important. And then also, having radios, airband radios to make broadcasts, putting NOTAMs out, all that sort of stuff. So, you just have to do the best that you can there.
Yeah. Good answer, Elliot. But guys, that's all that we have time for today. So again, thank you very much for everyone joining and the interactions. If anyone wants to get out in touch with us in particular, there are details on the screen. And thanks everyone for joining. Hope everyone has a good day and catch you later.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.